Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of I'm Not Gonna Be Quiet. My name's Danica, and I'm your host. If this is your first time joining us or you've been with us since the beginning, it's important for me to share that this is a space where folks step into the circle of community to share the path that they have traveled to find liberation after periods of staying silent about their experienced pain and harm. In each interview, we get a chance to hear and learn from our guest what they refuse to be quiet about, what their silence costs them, and the price they have paid for their freedom. I'm here, you're here, let's get comfortable, and let's get free together. I'm excited to share with you a component of the I'm Not Gonna Be Quiet podcast series that's called the Elderberry series. Now, if you've taken elderberry syrups or gummies or juices, then you know that it is a berry and a flower that is packed with antioxidants and vitamins that boost our immune system. And if we know anything about our immune system post-COVID, is that it is the part of us that protects us from getting sick. And so within the Elderberry series, we are bringing elders of the community on to share with us their successes, their failures, their detours, their mistakes, and their wisdom. And so join me in welcoming the first elder in the Elderberry series, Kathy Freeman Bowen. Kathy's pronouns are she and her, and she is a happily retired social worker. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
It is my pleasure. When I thought of this series, you were the first person that I knew I wanted to invite on and have a conversation with because, you'll tell us a little bit about yourself, but I'll just share with our listeners that Kathy and I stumbled into each other taking the train into the city every day. And then our paths crossed in the workspaces a few times. But what I love and learned from Kathy is that she's a brilliant, beautiful light. She is passionate, and she knows a lot. I feel like every conversation I have with her, I'm picking up some gems. And so similar to all the other folks that I've had a chance to have a conversation with, Kathy is no different, but she is an elder. And so the reverence that I have for you is very real and very high.
Thank you.
So, yes, it's my pleasure. You're welcome. So, Kathy, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. I guess I'll start with this point that I was born and raised in the village of Harlem, New York City. I'm one of a sibling set of 6. 2 of my brothers are no longer with us. Like many Black and Spanish-speaking families of color, my family lived in a set of projects. New York City has hundreds of projects. I was also bused downtown to public schools. Decent education, I have to say that. I'd like to talk about some pivotal moments. Certainly the Black Power movements. I'm talking about the 70s. There was the Black Power movement, Civil Rights movement, anti-war movement, Free Angela Davis movement, and the Young Lords. And all of these moments, all of these entities affected my life. I remember protesting the war in Vietnam. I remember the Young Lords situated and organizing in my community. Certainly in Harlem, there was Black Power, Black Panthers. So these are things that I have fond memories of. Also, I'm an avid reader. Reading is a thing that I do every single day. I fell in love with books as a child, and I continue to read to this day. So I spent a lot of time in the library on 106th Street. I purposely chose to make application to HBCUs, and I decided to go to to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, largely because I have family here. And then I decided to go to graduate school. So I attended graduate school for 2 years. I chose social work, which is one of the 3 professions that Black women typically choose, because I saw that as a way to make some changes, or to be a change agent for Black and poor families. So I've worked since the age of 14, and I'm happily retired. So it was at Lincoln that I got my political feet wet. I heard Kwame Ture, aka Stokely Carmichael, speak. And at that point, I was drawn to the All African People's Revolutionary Party, which I joined, and I learned so much from. I want to share a story that while in high school, again, because I'm an avid reader, and I was an avid reader then, I have this clear memory of being in American history class. And one of the questions punted to me and my classmates, was what were the good things about colonialism? And I would be the first person to have my hand up, and I would answer the question. It would give people history and religion and customs and mores, not understanding what that question meant. It was not until I got older, it was not until I attended undergraduate school, and at the point that I joined the All African People's Revolutionary Party, that I learned the truth. So in addition to that organization, I was a member of the National Black Independent Political Party that was founded here in Philadelphia. I forget what year, but I was there at the beginning, and I was here. I stayed until the very end of that organization. After that, I joined the Committee for Social Responsibility, and now I am a member of Black Alliance of Peace. I'm also, because I'm an avid reader, I'm also a member of 2 book clubs, one of which has been around for 25 years. I'm a member of a radical Black Christian group. I'm also a member of a radical study group that meets weekly. And like I said, I'm a member of Black Alliance of Peace. I am divorced. I'm happily retired. I have a favorite son and a favorite daughter and a favorite grandson. Those are my gems, Yana, Malik, and Malik Jr.
Love that you said favorite, and it's favorite in a very singular way, so that there is no competition. I
Right,
love that.
absolutely.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing your background. You have lived. And just from what you shared about your life, it gives us a very clear glimpse into who you are and how you became who you are. And it kind of teases us with what we're going to get from you. Because you've had, again, like you said, some very pivotal moments in your life, thinking pro-Black, pro-woman, pro-Black, radical Christian experiences that I imagine have shaped you. So I'm really excited and ready to dive in. At different moments in life, we are in the position of being a truth giver or a truth seeker. And sometimes within seconds of one another, we're both. And so in this moment, we are seeking. We are curious. We want to know. We want to learn. We want to grow. What have you learned to not be quiet about?
I would focus that on 2 points, and I'll start with employment. I've worked since the age of 14. My first job was neighborhood youth court. Okay. And then after graduate school, I worked as a social worker. So I've worked in quite a few capacities. And I will say that one I stayed in for many, many years, was toxic, or at least it became more toxic. It became a toxic environment. Things changed, and we were social workers. We were social workers who were issued impossible assignments because I was one of those persons who spoke up. Sometimes I was the only voice out there, but it was important then, as it is important now, to speak to what is harmful to staff, workers. It's important to do that. So what came out of that was we were able to organize other persons in that facility to bring in a union. So I'm proud of that work, and I'm proud of being part of that work. But as I said, it had become a very toxic environment. With that said, I did all I could to hang in there, because again, we're faced with being wage earners who need to earn that money so that we can support our families and ourselves. So I stayed there for as long as I could until God opened another door for me, and that happened seamlessly. I was able to walk out of that place, and I felt good about making that move because, again, I was just losing it. It was unhealthy for me. I was losing some mental balance. I have to say, I don't want to say I was clinically depressed, or maybe I was, but I knew that I needed to change my environment. And the good news is that I had options. So I was able to issue my resume to a number of places, and the door opened, and I walked through there. Took a job doing something a lot different, but in some ways the same. Less money, but that was okay because I had to make some adjustments. But certainly that stress was not there. So that was important.
Kathy, thank you for sharing your first gem. That's powerful, right? Because you are someone who is clearly intelligent, a critical thinker, an organizer, someone who believes in community, and somebody who knows how to negotiate spaces that are harmful. And so I appreciate you giving us that gem, like, know when it's time to go, and you don't have to stay. And I hear you clearly when you say you have options. That's huge, because I know for myself, I've had that experience. And I know so many of my peers are in really toxic work environments. And it does indeed leave them feeling depressed and anxious, and sometimes even suicidal.
Right.
And it's just harmful all around, right? It's harmful to their physical bodies. We know outcomes, we know social determinants can predict outcomes for folks in terms of how long they live, health outcomes. So that's really important. I'm curious, was there a particular moment when you said, that's it, I've got to go?
Yeah. It had gotten to a point that I wasn't sleeping. It had gotten to a point where my relationships changed, and I didn't like that. And it is true that for me, for you, and for some other people, we have options. We have options. Everyone doesn't have that. I like to think that the master's degree helped open up some doors, and the fact that I attended Bryn Mawr, for some reason, opened up even more doors. But that's my story. But the bottom line was that when you've done all that you can do, and what I did was I raised as much cane as possible. I opened my mouth. And at times I was the only one doing that. It was important to get some support. I had then, and I have now, a circle of people around me that I was able to bounce some things off with. And I do things to maintain balance. More so in the workplace, trying to bring in a union, a healthy union, to create a decent, livable working environment for the staff. So that's still in place, and that's the good news. That's the good news. But for me, it was time for me to do something different. And I worked there for many, many years. And at some point, I thought that I would be able to retire from that institution. But that didn't happen, and that's okay. You got to look around and say, you know what, your mental health is important, and sometimes you have to know when to leave the table. You just have to know when to end that relationship, and relationships also includes our relationships with employment facilities. So, and if you had that option, take it. You know, because there's nothing like sanity. It's nothing like that balance.
Yeah.
And as long as you, and I think what's also important for all of us to remember is that don't get caught up into the politics, because it's never the patients or the clients. It's always the other stuff. It's management and the office politics. Stay focused on providing the best you can for folk that need that support, that help. And I felt good about that. So I just decided to do that someplace else in a different capacity. So that was good. It worked for me.
You are telling my story, and I'd like for you to get out my head, please, respectfully.
That's funny.
This, I think this is the story of so many people.
Absolutely.
Like, particularly at nonprofits, at, these institutions that are meant to serve the least of, and
right.
the most socially disenfranchised. They are some of the most violent and corrupt spaces. And so I appreciate you sharing this. I swear to goodness, this is my story.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is that your story happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
My experience just happened.
Yeah.
And I know so many other people that are in that same predicament. And my feeling is, do what you can do to get free. Right? Some of us can organize, and some of us can do what you do, which is let's bring folks in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get a union set up. Let's get some protection set around us. And then others, you might not be able to do that. That's not your lane.
Right.
But what I'm taking from this is that you matter most. Your health matters most. So do what you can do without harming other folks. But certainly you're not the sacrifice.
Absolutely. You said it. You said it. You said it all. That's your story. That's my story. That's a story for so many women, men. That's our story. And every now and then I just get in touch with, wow, can you imagine what it was like for Black people 50 years ago? That's wow. At any rate, after you do all that you can do and feel good about that, you got to do that. You got to take those risks. You got to bring the magic. You got to bring the voice. Raise Cain, principally, and then you have to check yourself and see what is important for you. How do you maintain your sanity? Because when it starts affecting your relationships with other people, when it starts affecting your relationship with your children, then something has to give.
Right. Another gem. Those are the indicators, right? Your body is always the first indicator of what's right and what's wrong. And when you are experiencing sleep disruption, when you are experiencing a breakdown in your relationships, those are red flags.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that. A gem. I hope the listeners are taking notes and are feeling inspired. And, I always tell people, like my interns or folks that I train, your first day, get your exit plan together. Get your exit plan together. And so I'm hoping our listeners are feeling empowered and, leave when you can leave. Right? Because I'm not encouraging folks to be like, well, I'm done. I'm tired of being abused. Because, the reality is that racism is systemic.
Yes.
It's embedded in the fabric of this country. It's everywhere. And
Yes. Yes.
so there's always some level of fight. But get your coins together, get your plan together, and
Mm-hmm.
leave when you're ready. But in the meantime, be
Mm-hmm.
gentle with yourself and
Mm-hmm.
take care of yourself.
Yeah. Nicely said. Nicely said.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm echoing a lot of what you're saying. So
Yeah.
thank you.
So then you think about those persons who don't have those options. I just think about
Yeah.
the millions of folk around the world who have to go to these toxic environments, can't take that day off of work so that they can go to see about their loved one in the hospital, or take care of themselves or their children, that kind of thing. So that speaks to another point for me, and this is my politic. As you said, racism is systemic. Racial capitalism is real. I'm proud of the fact that I've been actively engaged in some radical political formation over the years. I've taken some breaks for the children to do that, and that was okay. But in some ways, that has always been centered in my life. From the All African People's Revolutionary Party to the National Black Independent Political Party to Black Alliance for Peace to the study groups. That's always been important in my life. It is nothing for, and I think what happens every single day is that it's easy for Black people to sit around and talk about the problems that are going on in our communities. And sometimes that language is that they need to do this. They talking about Black folk. That kind of thing. But my point is that when you look at evictions, when you look at what's happening to homeless citizens, when you look at student debt, when you look at medical care, education, when you look at war, when you look at imperialism, climate change, all of these things are rooted. All of these things have a common thread, and that is this racial capitalism. We've got to radicalize ourselves in our communities and ourselves and in our nation and the world to do away with this, so that workers who need to take time off for themselves or for their families can do that without being faced with not having a job. So that pollution, the money that is spent on war, the military industry, the money that is spent on war, when you think about climate change and you think about war being connected to that as the number one polluter that contributes to climate change, the money that this country uses on war can be used for our communities, can be used for education, can be used for affordable housing, can be used so that people don't have to choose between paying a hospital bill and buying food. It's ridiculous. It's a contradiction. It just doesn't, it's just, yeah, it's all of those things. So with that said, I'd like to see more people just get involved in their communities. If you go to a church, get involved in your church. Mosque, whatever you do, just get involved in your community. And I'd like to see for more of us to be actively engaged in radical politics. And what that may look like is joining an organization. What that does look like is joining an organization. So I think those are important because it's all connected. All of it's connected. And what's happening is that politicians put bandages on these issues. I've been in Philadelphia for over 40 years, and it's always been a predominantly Democratic city council. There's been mayors that are Democrat. And my point here is that still, in the year 2023, the educational system is deplorable. Housing, just trying to find affordable housing, whether it's trying to buy a house or live in a housing accommodation. Those prices are ridiculous. We all know what's going on with food prices. All of it's ridiculous. So we have to do something different, because what we've been doing for years and years it's not working. So let's try something different. So I'm pleased that I'm with these organizations. I'm pleased that I've had worked in these organizations. I'm pleased that I take time out to study so I can develop politically. Yeah, it's all connected.
Everything you're saying is so critical. And again, they're huge gems, particularly if you're younger and you're just starting life and you're curious and you're on a quest for figuring things out, or if you're in the middle of life and like the pandemic has revealed that what we're doing, like you said, is not working.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole idea around individualism is really
Mm-hmm.
rooted in colonialism and
Absolutely.
racism.
Absolutely.
And so what you're saying is so powerful. Find your community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Find your community and get to work. Again, everybody has a role to play. It's kind of like, when you're talking about war, everybody's targeting the same thing, but some people are doing it with airstrikes. Some people are on land. Some people are the intelligence. Some people are on the seas. It's the same thing. From what I'm getting from you is just find community, get organized, contribute how you can contribute.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It raises some questions. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to live in a world where your dollars are being used to oppress other folk who've never done anything to you, who simply have the right to self-determination? What does it mean that this country sanctions other countries and these countries are not able to support themselves, from getting medical care to food and those kind of things that they need to sustain themselves? These dollars are being done in our name. So we have to take responsibility for envisioning a new world. And what does that mean? And what do you do to that? And on that's on one level. On a more smaller level, what are you doing in your community? What are you doing in your community? What does it mean to be of community? It's important. I think that if people were to stop talking about problems and do something about it, ask that question: what are you doing? Simple things. I know folk who donate clothes that they no longer want to churches and to facilities that provide services to homeless people. Continue to do that, or do that. Start doing that. That's helping community.
These are helpful steps to take, right? Because I agree. I think we're beyond the point of just naming the problem. We know what it is. It hasn't changed. We're beyond the point of interrogating it and talking about it. It's now action.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's, as a social worker, there are the stages of change. There's the pre-contemplative, the contemplative, the planning, the action, the maintenance. We're in the action phase. Like, we already know what to do, and now we just have to do those things. And I love that you highlighted what we can do on a micro level, right? Within our specific family, our religious and social groups, our neighborhoods, our cities, our states, our country, and then on a global level. Again, if COVID did anything to push us to a tipping point where we can improve people's quality of life, is it showed us that being in community with each other and having a collective firm boundary around taking care of one another, it did that. Right. And so when we individually do it, the collective moves quickly and forcefully. And so I appreciate these steps. I'm inspired. I'm inspired from everything you shared, everything. Because I know one of the, some of the things that I need to do more of is read more.
Mm-hmm.
I need
We
to
all
carve
do.
out time and step away from, my phone. And I love a good nap, but I might be napping
Mm-hmm.
a little too much. But I need to read more. And so that that's one thing I'm starting,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start reading more. But also, some of the things that myself and my friends have been doing is just meeting and thinking about, like, what
Mm-hmm.
does it look like to build an intentional community?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we've kind of been on pause,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to jump back into that. So I appreciate
Mm-hmm.
you inspiring me to, like, get back on it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
this,
That's a good point. Yeah. And I think about how this is connected to this point that I'm generally talking about. I remember watching a program on television and listening to this doctor talk about a patient who was literally dying as a result of COVID. Okay, and this patient was given a phone so he could speak to his wife. In his last conversation, can you imagine this? His last conversation with his wife was to tell her not to worry about the hospital bill. So they talked about the hospital bill. So that's just, but again, you shouldn't have to worry about a hospital bill. That should be the last thing. We should never, no one should be faced with a hospital bill. Healthcare should be free. Education should be free. Those kind of things. How do we make that happen? Yeah, and I think too that that some of us use those opportunities as taking those conversations to another level, just helping people to center the conversation around racial capitalism, helping people to see what these contradictions are and how we do need to do something different. So those spaces are there for folk to do that kind of work. Yeah.
you're right, indeed.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
so you brought up two brilliant points that I think certainly will stay with me and stay with our listeners. One, know that you can leave, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can leave your place of employment, recognizing not everybody has that privilege. But if you do, you don't have to stay. We are not committed to them because they are not committed to us. And
Mm-hmm.
nobody has the right to harm us. And so
Mm-hmm.
using your voice and saying, I'm done, and then, throw up the deuces and leave. Sometimes we just need to be told that. We need to
Yeah.
hear from someone that it's okay to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
I
agree.
appreciate that. That's chef's kiss. And the
Thank you.
other, I feel like what I'm hearing you say is community. Find it, build it, create your safety, and move it forward so that we can have, like, this huge paradigm shift where we're not worried about, you know, how we're going to die and who's going to pay for it, the burden that
Mm-hmm.
it leaves our families, so
Yeah.
that everybody has access to healthcare and education and
Mm-hmm.
employment and
Mm-hmm.
housing. And we're not taking any shorts on that anymore. I really,
Mm-hmm.
those are huge ideas to just kind of shape how we move. Those are two powerful life lessons, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Regardless of where you are in your life. These are, critical pieces that can really help you reshape how you see
Mm-hmm.
yourself in the world and how you see the world that you live in and you
Mm-hmm.
want for others.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that, and if you do go to, as many of us do, go to those political forums where those candidates are there, raise those questions. If that's the kind of work you're going to do, that's where you want to situate your politics. Hold the politicians accountable. And I'm not sure how to do that, but hold them accountable. Make them say what they're going to do. And if they don't do it, then come up with something else. But I think that we always hear the same verbiage out of the mouths of these politicians. So we have to do something different with them if that's where you want to center your politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's an excellent strategy, right? Do something different so that we can get different results. And now is the
Mm-hmm.
time. There's definitely a change in culture, and we see that, by, the great resignation, the soft living, the soft working situations. It's happening. The revolution, it didn't happen in a day. It is a gradual thing. And so even just having this confirmation, I'm sorry, even just having this conversation is confirmation that it's happening. And
Mm-hmm.
this conversation is going to bring more people
Mm-hmm.
to the movement, and it's
That's
going to
right.
push it forward faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you.
everything that you shared, like, checked each box, right? What are you not going to be quiet about? Leaving toxic workspaces when it's time to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And two, building community, because the community is what's going to sustain you and going to
Mm-hmm.
create the safe spaces that we desire to live in. And
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you sharing what you lost when you stayed in those spaces and you were
Mm-hmm.
silent about it, right? We lose
Mm-hmm.
power, we lose relationships, we lose
Mm-hmm.
health, we
Mm-hmm.
lose so much.
Yes. Yes.
And so you talking about those losses, I think, is going to help people recognize what they're experiencing currently. And
Mm-hmm.
then I love how you detailed how you just set yourself free, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
found your own liberation, because we know that only we can liberate ourselves, not a system, not a job, not a
Mm-hmm.
person,
Mm-hmm.
just us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saying the deuces to them,
Mm-hmm.
and and knowing that, you can recover what you lost and build even more. I think that was
Mm-hmm.
so critical and so special to hear,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you've lived through this
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so many years ago. In closing, I guess, you've really said it all. What is the last thing that you want to leave our listeners, being the
Yeah.
first in our Elderberry series?
Yeah. Balance. Yeah, you got to find balance. And what that looks like for me is, I'm an avid reader, so I continue to read. I play games on my cell phone. I get a kick out of that. I watch the Golden Girls. No shame in that, because that helps me get through the day. You got to find something that brings you joy. You got to find something every single day to make you smile. Now, that's in addition to my continuing the political work that I do, recognizing that women hold up half the world, and that in all of our formations, we have to remind men that because we are all affected by sexism, we have to remind men we have to check them on their stuff. African people have a long history in this country of doing some radical work, and that needs to continue. I'm so proud of the young people in Black Alliance for Peace. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of other young folk doing some righteous work. So I like to see that continue. I recognize that as an elder, that I just can't rest. We have to continue to do this work. All of us have to do this work, and each one learns from each other. You got to practice humility. You have to recognize, and I do this with my children, that I apologize when I'm wrong, is I'm not always right. And in formations, you have to hear all the arguments, and sometimes you then have to yield to, because now you've changed your position. So that's all healthy. But always to be principled in your relationships with all people. And in jobs, stay focused on the work that you're doing, and stay away from that politics. Try to create change until you can't take it anymore, and feel good about making that decision to end that relationship. It's all good. It's all good. Thank you.
So at the end, you just added 8 more life lessons. And I love them all. I appreciate you. And I hear you and I see you. Balance, right? There's work to do, but that's not our sole purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is joy. And that, just as, fervently as we seek community and we seek justice, and we seek righteousness, we have to seek joy.
Mm-hmm.
because that's the only way you can sustain the energy and the focus you have for making the change that you want. So
Hmm.
that is so important to hear from one of our brilliant elders who's
Thank you.
lived long enough to figure out how to make it work and how to make it work successfully.
Hmm.
So,
Thank you.
sister, well, no, it is my pleasure. Thank you, Sister Kathy Freeman Bowen. This has been a privilege. You have shared in such a vulnerable way and a brilliant way. And I feel like what you've given us is going to stay with us, and it's going to help us figure out next steps and be better and just continue to evolve. So thank you for being my first guest in the Elderberry series. Ashe.
Ashe. Blessed be.
Yes. And thank you to my listeners. I appreciate y'all following me. This is new. We're working out the kinks. We're making it work. But all of that aside, we are bringing you light. We are bringing you joy. We are bringing you brilliance. And so I will see you again in 2 weeks. Be well, everyone.